The important things, I think, when one looks at what is emerging from the numbers, are not new. It's things that people know. And they are not easy, for if they were, they would have been long solved. So one is not trivializing the complexity. But certainly education is the key, because without it, you cannot resolve unemployment. And unemployment, as a driver of poverty, is increasing at an accelerated pace. It's accelerating the pace as a driver of poverty. And if over a period of 5 years, we've got twice the number of percentage points that we got over a 10-year period, then we have a serious problem. And if we don't resolve the issue of education for skills, and not current skills, but also future skills, then there's a very, very difficult issue. To add to that, I mean, the fourth industrial revolution is very difficult to understand which way it will come. It's robotics, it's everything. And if we don't have people who can reason, who can invent, who can participate in that economy, they'll be the lumpen, and they'll be unemployed. And therefore, it heralds a crisis, a global crisis, not only in South Africa, but a major, major crisis. But in South Africa, given our own circumstances, the impact will be absolutely very, very difficult, given the two economies that we have, a very highly industrial economy and the economy that is of peasants and the lumpen proletariat and the like. So the situation of education is absolutely key. And in defining that education, we really have to ask ourselves the more difficult questions around how do we cope with the fourth industrial revolution. We have the opportunity to leapfrog into that, but we must focus on education. For South Africa, the evidence points to that. The second is a corollary to education, which is employment. Obviously, we have to have tactical moves to deal with matters unemployment so that it doesn't become a difficult thing. The third, which is really a consequence of education, is inequality. The inequality is just too high amongst blacks themselves, although at a low income level. And the interracial inequality across races, that is also very, very high. So the matter of social cohesion in a world that is being polarized is very crucial for South Africa to ensure that it manages in this multipolar or polarizing world. And the numbers do suggest that that situation has to be arrested and it can't be delayed. From a demographic point of view, the population of South Africa has been growing at a fairly low rate of 1.1, 1.2%. And the GDP on average has grown at about 3% in the last number of years, but currently it's closing on 1%. What is the key issue there? The key issue that has always been mentioned by economists and development scholars has been, if the population grows at a higher rate, then it's difficult to achieve development. But here, the population is growing at a very low rate. The issue is not about the rate of growth of population, and I don't think it is part of the discourse in South Africa. It is the growth of the economy that is problematic. It's growing at such low rate that even a minimal population growth of 1.2, maybe if the classical economics is followed, would be difficult to sustain that population. So the issue is not about growth of the population, it's about an economy that is not really growing. That's the one from the demographics. The second is, of course, in the economy itself, and I've touched on that. The GDP growth, as I said, has been averaging 3%, but experts suggest, and including the Reserve Bank and the Treasury, don't see the economy growing beyond 1%. We also experienced a negative growth in one of the quarters of the previous year. We'll be releasing the GDP numbers in another 1 month, and we'll see where we have ended in the year 2016. So the economy has not been performing that well, particularly mining, manufacturing, and agriculture. Both those are the real economy. We've seen growth in finance. Retail trade has been subdued. So this is where we are, South Africa. Well, West South Africa has done very well indeed. And I think this is what the RDP articulated right from the onset, is to deal with poverty, grinding poverty. South Africa, over the last 22 years, has actually attacked poverty. The rates of poverty were halved. Food poverty was reduced from about 22% to 8% in the past number of years, 22 years. And what were the things that were provided? The grants, social grants for children and for adults, housing through the RDP systems, free basic electricity, free basic water, all that, and free education. All that has helped to reduce the grinding poverty that South Africa would have had those interventions not been made. But the challenge, I think, or the challenge, in fact, the facts bear testimony to this, is that all those inputs do not dent unemployment. And to the extent that they don't dent unemployment, intensity of poverty will never be reduced. And unemployment is the biggest threat to South Africa, in that in the last 5 years, 2011 to 2016, unemployment as a driver of poverty increased by 12 percentage points. In the 10 years, 2001 to 2011, it grew 7 percentage points. So in half the time, it doubled the number of percentage points. So it means it is accelerating at such speed that if it continues at that point, in that way, there will be a tipping point, obviously. And the bridge between unemployment and poverty is through education. And we can see, if you look at multidimensional poverty drivers, for the youth, if you take them as a group, that is the highest driver. It contributes 35 percentage points in that space. At the general household level, in terms of years of schooling, it contributes 11%. So if you look at these numbers, the multidimensional poverty, and look at the plight of the youth, what drives the unemployment, what drives their poverty is years of schooling. And to the extent that those years of schooling do not generate outcomes that give them employment opportunities, then those are going to grow, and there is definitely a key driver of a tipping point in unemployment as a driver of poverty. Yes, I think the state at the moment is really facing the issue of education. This is the biggest challenge that we have of dealing with education, because it's only through education that we can tackle the problems of unemployment and poverty. So it is a key factor. Of course, its gestation period is long, it's generational, it's 30 years, 60 years, but important things take time. Well, in terms of the statistics that we collect, you really look at who is employed, who is unemployed, who is participating in the economy, who earns what levels of income. Those are the things that you have to look at in order to understand the issues of transformation. Ownership is important, certainly, and ownership as a driver and change of transformation, drive of transformation is crucial. But more importantly, are the beneficiaries of that transformation. Of course, if transformation and benefits of transformation is employment, blacks have not benefited in that space because the unemployment levels are very high. If it is education, proportion of blacks that actually succeed through university is very low. 3, if it's TVET, the unemployment of blacks, particularly from TVETs, remains very high. For whites and colors who have had some TVET education, proportions that are unemployed are much lower. So basically, transformation, I think, at the level of where it actually counts the most is how much have the society of South Africa achieved education across the board, almost at an equal level. That, I think, remains the most difficult part to transform society. The outcome of that is a perpetuation of unemployment levels and production and reproduction of poverty.